All right, so it's 8 o'clock, so we're gonna start our forum for Wednesday, June the 1st, mind you. And I would like to welcome everybody here. My name is Phoebe Binsger. I help facilitate the forum along with Kathy Hevers, Judy Ann Files, and Barbara Bynum, who's not here today. If you watch today's program or a recent program you want to see again, you can view them off the City of Montrose website and go down to forum and put the date in. It's usually out the same day. It's always worth seeing again. Yeah, some of them really, I would do that just because it's kind of fun. Our speaker today, and I'm excited to have him here, is Mike Kusar. He's with the Montrose Forest Products here in Montrose, and I'm going to read his bio, which that is very impressive. He has been married to Beth Kusar, who's the principal at Olathe Elementary School for the past 17 years. They have one daughter, Maggie, who's 14, and she'll be a freshman at Montrose High School this fall. He has a business management degree from Western Colorado University in Gunnison and a Master of Business Administration from Mercer University in Macon, Georgia from 2010. Worked for Raven Logistics in Detroit, Michigan following graduation from Western. At the time, Raven was the largest shipper of forest products in North America. That was in 2002 to 2005. Worked for Tolleson Lumber Company in Perry, Georgia in sales and progressively more senior production positions from 2005 to 2010. He worked for Interfor, which is a public traded Canadian forest products company, one of the largest lumber producers in the world from 2010 to 2015. He moved to Montrose in 2015 to start position as a general manager at Montrose Forest Products. He is chairman of the board for the Montrose Economic Development Corporation. He also serves as vice president for the board of Habitat for Humanity of the San Juans and is a member of the Lunchtime Montrose Rotary Club. In his spare time, he enjoys spending time and traveling with his family. This is interesting. He loves to fish alone, so don't ask him to go fishing because of less tangled lines to take care of. And he's a semi-rabid University of Georgia football fans, which he says, go dogs. You know you mispronounce that as okay, yeah. I know. Yeah. And he and his family love living in Montrose. And I read his bio that he sent to me yesterday. I'd never met Mike before today. And as impressive and as accomplished as your bio is, I thought, this guy's going to be old. So when I saw you, you're really not. You've done a lot in a short amount of time. So enough of that. We will have questions that you can ask at the end, so hold them, keep them in your head, and I will bring you the microphone and you can ask your questions. All right, so without going any more, I'd like to introduce Mike from Montrose Forest Products.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Glad it's a small group. I don't love public speaking. I was telling my wife last night, I gotta talk tomorrow, and she said, well, just don't try to be too witty or too funny or too smart, just be yourself. So, this was just kind of a slide to have up here while we were waiting, and I'll do a little reading. And this is an overview of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Nyman Enterprises, that's our parent company, and of course Montrose Forest Products, employees that we have in Montrose and beyond Montrose, investments in the plant site, recent past, we've had a lot of investment in the mill site, and we've got a lot ongoing now that I'll talk about. I'll talk about our operations, what products we produce, our markets, the end uses of our lumber, timber, and our log supply, byproducts, contributions to the local economy, and contributions to local causes. I like to showcase what the Nyman family is doing here in Montrose. Even though we're headquartered in Hewlett, Wyoming, they're doing a lot right here in and around Montrose. I'll tell you a little bit about compliance and something. Lumber prices, this seems to be everybody's question. Once they find out I work in the lumber business, they want to know why the prices are so high. So we'll talk a little bit about that before we open it up for questions. So Montrose Forest Products, like I said, is a division of Nyman Enterprises. Nyman Enterprises is a family-owned company based in Hewlett, Wyoming, which is up in that northeast corner. If any of you have ever heard of Devil's Tower or seen Devil's Tower, you can actually see it from the headquarters sawmill there. They also have a mill in Spearfish, South Dakota, and a pellet mill there as well. They have a mill, of course, here in Montrose, and their newest addition is a mill in Gilcrest, Oregon. All of the other mills cut strictly ponderosa pine, and I'll tell you a little more, but we do quite a few different species here. That's a picture that I took out on the log yard here in Montrose a couple summers ago. I just thought it was neat with all those bucks standing there. Grandpa Nyman built the family's first sawmill back in 1936. It was built to supply timbers and bracing for the mines there in the Black Hills, for the gold mines. That's how he got into the business, and it's just grown from there. They had the mill there in Hewlett for quite some time, and it was in the late 90s that they started acquiring new mills under the leadership of our current, well, he's not our current CEO, he just stepped back from our CEO, but our president, Jim Nyman, who is the patriarch at the moment. Montrose Mill here was purchased by the Nymans in 2012 out of receivership. If any of you have been here long enough, this mill's been here for a long time. I think at our current site, I get some questionable answers, but somewhere around the 1960s is when a mill site started there. It's had several owners over the years. Like I said, it was in receivership, I think, from about 2010 to 2012 when the Nyman family purchased the mill, and they've done a lot with the mill since then. I would say that they've put more dollars into that mill since they've had it in 10 years than all the previous owners have. We're looking upwards of $70 million in investments since 2012 out there at the mill. Let's see. We are the highest producing sawmill in Colorado. If any of you don't know where we are, we're at the end of 6530 Road where the pavement ends, out near San Juan Gardens, if you're familiar with that. A lot of people don't know you have the largest producing sawmill in Colorado right here in Montrose. When I moved to town, I'd be getting a haircut, and they said, "What brought you to town?" I said, "Well, I came to work at the sawmill." "What sawmill?" So there's a lot of people that don't know about the mill out there, but it is a pretty big mill producing a lot of lumber and a gem in Montrose, if you ask me. So I'll tell you a little bit about employees and contractors for the mill. We've got about 90 employees currently. We'd like to have 100 if you know Cascade folks. We're a little short like everybody else. If you read the paper, you've seen our ad lately. We've got jobs for electricians and millwrights and laborers and all sorts of things out at the mill. Our annual payroll in 2021 was $5.7 million, which, if you do the math, comes out to about $64,000 per employee. So I think people a lot of times see us at the gas station with sawdust all over us and grease all over us and maybe think that they're not great jobs out there. They are, what do you want to say, jobs for hardworking people, but they do pay well. I will say part of that, overtime is part of our culture with the hourly. I mean, these guys and gals are working a lot of hours to get to those dollars. It's not like working at Google, but they are good jobs. If somebody wants to work and come to work, and the sawmill starts at 5:30 in the morning, so it's not for the faint of heart. You got to be there at 5:30 every day, day in and day out. I'm just kind of telling you how great of an employer we are so you can go tell those 10 people that we need. But we offer health insurance that's free to our employees. That coverage extends to their families as well. You don't see that much anymore. We've got 401k matching, life insurance, paid holidays, company-funded health reimbursement account, safety bonuses, and more. We also indirectly employ many more contractors out in the woods and on the roads. We've got 7 logging crews that are contracted to us. We've got several others that aren't contracted to us, but also bring us logs. We have about 50 log truck and log truckers that are contracted to us as well. So our footprint expands well beyond the mill. Let's see. We also have a reload, which is a log concentration yard down in Del Norte, Colorado. We're doing a lot of logging down there. So we'll bring the logs to the log concentration yard, and then later we'll bring them from Del Norte to the mill. That way we can get more logs out of the woods in a timely fashion. So we've got people working there as well. Contractors, those are. So a little bit about the investment. I told you 50 million in upgrades and projects. That's completed. I said 70 something because we're also got another 20 something million going on right now as we speak. Some of those that have been completed were our 400,000 gallon water tank and fire suppression to all of our buildings. When the Nymans bought the mill, they did that, that's a huge deal. Then obviously we've got a lot of flammable things around there. We have a lot of welding, cutting, that sort of stuff going on. We've already seen that pay off from a small fire we had a couple years ago out at our debarker, and the fire suppression did its job and kept it to a small area. We put in an automated trimmer, sorter, and stacker at the existing sawmill. That was about a $15 million upgrade right when they purchased the mill. We used to pull all the lumber by hand as it came down the line and sorted in, but now all that's computerized, automated. As the lumber comes down the line, it's automatically sorted and stacked. We put in a new 1,200 horsepower gang saw. I see someone from DMEA board here. That's a lot of horsepower on one thing. We try not to blink the lights in Montrose. We can start that up. We put in a truck tarping station for safety. Drivers can tarp their load without ever leaving the ground, not having to get on top of their load and risk falling off. Nyman family's done a lot of things like that aren't necessarily a payback that you can put on an ROI, but they are keeping people safe. They put in a dust abatement in the mill. We're cutting a lot of dead timber, so there's a lot of fine dust. So they invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in a dust abatement system. We have a $22 million state-of-the-art planer mill. I think I have a video on the next slide if it'll play. I'd like to show you guys. I think it's pretty impressive. We put it up against any planer mill out there in the country, from your Weyerhaeusers and your Georgia Pacifics. It's fully automated. Takes about 12 people to run. It used to take about 30 people to run our planer mill, so it's quite something to see. And we've got several large projects currently in process that I'll tell you about here in a minute. But let's see if I can get this to play. This was put together by the main supplier for the project. That's their logo there. This large building here was the new addition to planer mill. This is lumber that's been cut in the sawmill. Now it's going to enter the planer mill, get de-stacked, and get a nice smooth finish on it. That's a 55,000 square foot building. This planer mill is producing lumber at about 200 pieces a minute. That's the actual planer machine itself. So now the lumber's been planed and it's going to go through an auto grader that's grading all those pieces with computers instead of people deciding whether it'll make a stud grade or an economy grade, whether or not it needs to be trimmed to a shorter length to upgrade the value. That's the grader there. Basically a big scanner. Lumber is being automatically sorted with like pieces there until it makes a full unit, and then it'll drop down and automatically and goes with automatic stacker.
Those 2x4s?
They are. More than using the same stacker there. So that's kind of start to finish in the planer mill. I don't know what you guys know about a sawmill side, but we saw logs in the sawmill, turn them into rough lumber, take them to the dry kilns, dry the lumber, and then that's when it goes to the planer mill to get smooth finish, to get trimmed, to get stamped, to get packaged and ready to go. So it's kind of the last stage of the process before shipping. So about our projects that are currently underway, one of the big ones is a renewable energy biomass boiler. It's also going to have a steam turbine on it that creates 1.25 megawatts of electricity. So we're going to burn our sawdust, our chips, our ground material. We're going to power our kilns with that to dry our lumber. We'll create steam to dry lumber, and then on the side will be the turbine that creates electricity that we can use at the mill. That's pretty exciting. That right there is probably about a $15 million project. It's also going to include a new dry kiln. So we have two 214-foot dry kilns now. We're adding a third, so 50% more drying capacity. Not necessarily for more production, but we're making some new products. We're cutting some new species that take longer to dry. So we'll make about the same amount of lumber, but we are going to need the additional kiln capacity. We're also putting in a winding molder line right now that we can produce tongue and groove pattern products. We've begun to cut 1x4, 1x6, and 1x8 ponderosa pine. And we can turn that into wainscoting, flooring, pattern for your ceiling, like beaded ceiling. We can do all those sorts of things once that's up and going. It's real close. That and the kiln and the boiler are all going on right now. None of them are complete, but they're all in process, and the molder will probably be the first thing that's going here in the next couple of months. But we are going to need a molder person to run the molder, and we're going to need about 8 employees to work with that head person that we don't have yet. So I think we'll have the molder up ready to go without the employees that we need, unfortunately. If you're sensing the theme, it's a big challenge, I'll say, in our world right now, as I know it is with a lot of businesses. What are we doing out there at the end of 6530 Road? I guess I kind of just went through that, but we're a sawmill. We're turning logs into lumber. We receive about 8,000 18-wheeler loads of logs a year. We have a short, what we call breakup period that's ending right now, kind of weather dependent. Most of our logs are coming from above 10,000 feet in that area. Ponderosa pine may be a little lower, but traditionally all of our spruce and lodgepole pines come from high elevation. Of course, when the snow's melting, we have mud up there and we can't get the trucks in. So we stockpile logs all fall, summer, fall, and winter, and get ready for spring where we don't have logs coming in, and then we deplete our log pile at that time. I've been here for 7 years. We haven't run out of logs yet. I'm not taking credit, I'm just saying, while I've been here, we haven't run out of logs. Our forestry team's done a good job of keeping us a stockpile. Looks like we'll be fine again this year. We've already started getting in ponderosa pine, and the spruce will be coming in any week now. We produce around 85 million board feet of lumber per year. If you're not in the lumber business, that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you. So I said there's around 16,000 board feet of lumber in an average 2,000 square foot house. So we produce enough lumber to frame 42,500 houses per year. All the lumber that we produce is not framing lumber, so we don't really make enough for that, but that's the volume of lumber that we're producing. About 75% of our stud candidate stock, I would say, actually makes the stud grade. The other 25% or more goes into economy, which is more of an industrial grade that can't be used in housing. Like I say, pallets, cratings, industrial uses. So what do we produce? We produce Engelmann spruce, lodgepole pine studs in lengths up to 10 foot. That's 2x4s and 2x6s, 10 foot and shorter. That's what the mill there's produced for many, many years. And I was telling you now that we're getting into doing the ponderosa pine 1-inch boards in lengths up to 12 foot. That's 1x4s, 1x6s, and 1x8s. More like interior applications. They're not going to go behind the wall like your studs. They have to be prettier. You have to be more precise when you're doing it. So there's been a little learning curve. It's a little slower going. Part of that was out of necessity, which I'm kind of getting ahead of some of my slides, but as the dead wood that's been beetle killed out there is sitting in the forest longer, it becomes less and less useful to us. So there's less and less going to be available that will be good to make studs out of. So that's why we're trying to think ahead and get into the ponderosa pine. The San Juan National Forest down around Durango has a lot of ponderosa pine, and they're pretty aggressively selling that pine. We're excited to be getting a lot of it here in Montrose and turning it into boards. We make industrial lumber in all species. We call that in the 2x, that's an economy grade. In the 1x, it's a number 3 or a number 4. It's something that you'd see in a pallet that's going to Walmart, carrying goods around the country, crating of a tractor going who knows where. I didn't mention we also cut a little bit of white fir and a tiny bit of Douglas fir. We cut both of those products into studs as well. Where's our lumber go? We ship lumber all over the United States. In these weird markets we've had lately, I've seen loads leaving our mill going to Florida and Maine, and as far as ways you can get in the United States. A very small portion is exported to Mexico, but not a lot of export. Most of it stays here in the U.S. We do have a freight advantage to the middle of the country. Most of your mills are in the Pacific Northwest or the Southeast, so we're closer to Kansas and Nebraska and all those places by truck. And of course, everybody knows what's going on with freight and fuel right now. So we have a competitive advantage to the middle of the country. State that consumes most of our lumber, believe it or not, is Texas. We ship a lot of loads of studs to make houses in Texas. More of our lumber is shipped out of the state than stays in Colorado. There is some sold in Colorado, but not as much as you would think. And I kind of scratch my head on that sometimes. We get all this lumber coming in from everywhere, and ours is headed out. Maybe with freight stuff going on, some of that will change. 99% of our product, over 99% is shipped by truck. Every once in a while we'll ship a rail car. We don't have a rail siding at the mill, so we have to take it to a reload in Grand Junction or somewhere else, put it on a rail car, and then ship it. That can be cost prohibitive, so that's why so much is shipped by truck. What types of customers purchase our lumber? Our studs are sold to contractor yards. Your 84 lumbers, your Pro Bills, your Alpines. Not a ton of it, again, is sold locally, but you will see it here in Montrose occasionally. Our 1-inch ponderosa pine is sold more to your big box cash and carry markets. We're 12 foot and shorter, like I said. That's about all you can put on the roof of your Subaru and get home. If you're familiar with Menards in the Midwest, they're kind of just under a Home Depot or Lowe's. We do a lot of business on the 1-inch with Menards. They have a distribution yard in Nebraska where we'll send several trucks a day a lot of times. Economy and industrial products, again, are going to manufacturers that are making pallets or shipping various things that they need crating for. End uses of our lumber. Like I said, the 2x4 and 2x6 stud almost exclusively used in framing houses. It's not a beautiful product. It's made to go behind the wall. And the spruce is naturally straight. Actually, the dead timber is great that it's dried naturally in the woods. We just heat treat it and send it out to make houses. Our downfall in economies, over and over, pallets and crating and industrial uses. You got that. Locally, regionally, you can find our lumber and pallets being made in Grand Junction, bracing and crating in regional mines. Occasionally for sale, I've seen it in our local Home Depot. We don't sell it to our local Home Depot, but wholesalers purchase our lumber. I always like to walk down the lumber aisle when I'm in Home Depot because I'm a lumber nerd, but I walked in there several times and there's our lumber. We have our logo on the end of our stud, so it's easily recognizable.
What does the logo look like?
It says Montrose on the lumber. It was back on my first slide, I'll show it again, but it's a tree with a little circle around it. But it says Montrose very prominently. You'll know it's Montrose if you see it. We don't sell to the public. I'm the evil guy that stopped that 7 years ago. We were selling, 6 or 8 boards to someone who would come into the mill. We're just not set up for that. And then they'd bring 4 of them back and say they didn't like them. And so we just got out of that business. We load tractor trailer loads full of lumber. We're a high production producer and not a retail operation. So what type of trees do we cut? Engelmann spruce would be the #1 species that we cut. That's a lot of the beetle kill. Over the years, it's been the beetle kill. It's switching to more of a greener program. Lodgepole pine, subalpine fir. Those 3 are all marketed and ran together. So they all go through the mill together. They're mixed together. They have the same strength values. If you cut Douglas fir or white fir into studs, you have to run them separately, package them separately, market them separately, sell them separately. And of course the ponderosa pine that we're now turning into 1-inch product. Currently we've got about 2 years of log supply. If we were not to buy another timber sale, we could run the mill for another 2 years. That's a pretty decent position to be in. We're happy with that, and we try to stay a couple of years ahead on our log supply. Makes it easier for planning and investments and that sort of thing. Our current portfolio is around 70% Engelmann spruce, lodgepole pine. Most of that's Engelmann spruce, and 30% in the ponderosa pine. We foresee that getting closer to 50-50 in the coming years. But right now, it's more stud production than 1-inch production. In the past year, about 98% of our log supply came from national forests and 2% from private landowners. So basically, we buy all our timber from the national forest. Where do we source those logs? Speaking of the national forest, there's 5 national forests that we mainly pull from. The Gmug, the San Juan, the Rio Grande, the White River, and the Pike San Isabel. We consider the Gmug our home forest. We probably have more under contract with the Gmug than any of the others, but the San Juan's creeping up there with all the ponderosa pine they're offering. We source from about 275-mile radius of the mill. That's pretty big in the lumber world. I came from the southeast where if you went 70 miles, you passed 4 other mills that could have bought those logs. There's not a lot of large lumber producers in Colorado. We go a long way for logs, as far away as northern New Mexico and southern Wyoming. Back to the current issues with fuel prices and transportation, that's a challenge when you're getting logs from 275 miles away. You're paying a lot more for the trucking than you are for the actual timber. Of course, everybody knows about the beetles and the dead trees. Montrose Forest, the mill even prior to that, we've been harvesting those for 12 years. Some years, that percentage that we were cutting exceeded 80%. So when I said 8,000 loads of logs, and 80% of those were, for quite a few years now, were dead trees, standing dead. They're all dead when they get to the mill, but they were standing dead in the forest. We've made good use of those. You guys are all probably familiar with the pine beetles, spruce beetles. We've got all kinds of beetles here in Colorado. We've got a beetle for every tree. Some trees have more than one beetle, they can get them. That problem started many years ago, and that stuff that's been standing dead for a long time. Like I said, it's got a lot of crack, check, twist. It's got problems when it comes to the mill. It slows down our operations. We don't get the grade recovery. It becomes a safety issue at some point when it's breaking up and blowing up all over the mill. So we are moving into greener programs at the moment. Lodgepole went first, that stuff that's mainly north of I-70 or lodgepole pine, that's not a rule, but just mainly. And your spruce south of, has been killed more recently, so that's why we're in a lot of spruce now. We were in a lot of lodgepole years ago. I'm just saying it's not as merchantable, the shelf life in the woods. We're finding with the spruce, 7-8 years is really starting to push the usability for the mill if it was killed 7 or 8 years ago. We still have beetles, we're always going to have beetles. There's just not as much food for the beetles once they've killed so much of the forest. So, but they do leave the immature trees, and those are coming along behind. Of course, here in Colorado, we're about 75 years of growth before it's time for us to cut it and turn it into lumber. Everybody knows about the fire risk associated, so 8,000 truckloads less in the woods every year I think is a good thing for that risk. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get that video to play, I learned. How am I doing on time? 8:30, okay. I won't read all this SFI, but if you guys have seen this logo when you've been in Home Depot or buying furniture or anywhere, we participate in the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. It's a third party that certifies that we are harvesting logs the way they're supposed to be harvested. We get audited every year. They go out to our logging sites and check out our loggers. We have to put our loggers through continuing education. A lot of it has to do with watersheds and waterways and not getting near those with your logging equipment. And so anyhow, you can check out SFI online. There's a big price to pay for us, but the big box stores and some consumers, of course, are looking for that. Not that we aren't ourselves, but a lot of other people are looking to see that we're doing things the right way in the woods. People ask about byproducts a lot. We produce 60 truckloads a week of byproducts. So chips, shavings, bark, sawdust. Sawdust we sell to, this is currently, again, we're going to burn a lot of this once we have our biomass boiler up and running. But currently we sell our sawdust. It's mainly used in chicken houses as bedding and sold to the biomass power plant at Gypsum. If you've ever seen that, it's right along I-70 there. You can see it from the interstate. Chips are sold regionally to several companies who then regrind them, run a magnet over them, and call them certified playground chips. And they sell them to population centers as far away as Los Angeles and Phoenix and Denver. So a lot of schools out there in the West have our chips on the ground as playground material. And that's what we make the most of. We make about 10 to 12 loads of chips a day, depending on how dead the wood is that we're cutting and some other stuff. A bark sold locally, mainly to one customer who makes bark nuggets. You've seen, I think it's called Pioneer Sand now. They keep changing their name. On the way to Delta on the right there, they have piles and piles of our bark. And they'll sell the bark as landscape material, and then they'll sell the fines as soil amendments. And shavings are sold to a company across from the airport there, if you ever Delta Timber, but it's in Montrose. And he screens our shavings, he bags the nice curly ones and sells them to your Tractor Supplies and your Murdochs and all that as animal bedding. And then he sells the fines as absorbent to places that are doing drilling and that sort of thing. And hog materials sold to the biomass power plant at Gypsum and for landscaping material. Hog material is just little pieces of lumber that couldn't get made, they might have got trimmed off, and then they get what we call hog, basically ground up and chipped up and sold for those uses. Wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing, in our local economy, just what a driver we are here. We literally have hundreds of hotel nights and meals per year that we're responsible for with our corporate visitors, contractors, inspectors, salespeople that are coming to visit the mill. People don't realize how many people are actually coming to see the mill from out of town. We use local contractors on a lot of our projects for excavation, concrete work. All of our big metal buildings have been regional. Hirschberger up in Delta has done even that 55,000 square footer, so we use what I call local help for that. We spend repairing glass, heating and air, landscaping, sanitation, engineering, surveying, motor repair. We spend a lot of money in this community. We're a large utility consumer for power and gas. Each one is up to around $1 million a year right now in power, and then $1 million in gas as well. We spend on, of course, supplies and maintenance all over town, millions of dollars into our local economy. If you let me indulge, I just want to read off everybody that Nyman Families let us support in this community recently. They're really good. They encourage me and our company to, support everything going on in our community. From the MHS Girls Golf Team, Montrose Community Dinners, Montrose Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Montrose Pheasants Forever, Club 20, several regional snowmobile and Nordic ski clubs, Centennial Middle Robotics Team, Montrose Education Foundation, Montrose County Sheriff's Posse, Delta Volunteer Fire Department, the Valley Youth Orchestra, Black Canyon Boys and Girls Club, Aruna Project, Magic Circle Theater, Rec Center, Triathlon, Habitat for Humanity, San Juan Healthcare Foundation, Hope West, Shannon Ministries Food Bank, 4-H Haven House, Tribute to Aviation. We made a sizable donation to keep the statues downtown. Montrose High Safe Party, Montrose High Athletics, Olathe High Safe Party, chips to the new Outer Range project at the school district, chips to a bunch of the schools at the school district, chips to the Botanical Garden, sawdust to the 4-Hers, Delta Rec Softball, Montrose Youth Rodeo Club, Montrose Economic Development, Montrose County Fair, and the Delta High Softball Field. So I'm proud. And this is a picture of a bunch of our guys at a Habitat Build Day that we did here a couple years ago. I also want just that we're doing things the right way out there. I don't need to read all these off to you, but we have tons of regulation. I mentioned the new boiler. I want you to know that we've invested over $1 million in an electrostatic precipitator that will clean. There will be no visible emissions from that boiler that's going to be burning a ton of that material. So don't think we're plopping something down and going to smoke up your beautiful valley. You can read some of that stuff. But we're highly regulated. It seems like we're always having an inspection for one thing or another out there. We want to do it the right way, and we want to be a good partner in the community. Okay, so I said everybody's been asking about high lumber prices. Not that I the be all and end all, but here's some of the reasons, and it all comes really back to started with COVID, right? You got these supply chain issues. So all the mills out there aren't necessarily running at full capacity every day because of that, because of employee issues. When people were sick, when people were having to stay home, you just had less production. That kind of sparked the whole thing off. You had an uptick in housing demand due to low lending rates and increased household savings from people being at home, getting some government bucks, that sort of thing. That's individuals as well as, all these business owners with these PPP loans. There was just a lot of money floating around out there. So demand stayed strong. People were also home looking around the house and saying, hey, I need to fix this thing up. I can't go on vacation this year. I might as well do whatever project in the garage or the living room. Created more demand. You had an increase in square foot in homes. We were trending downward for a lot of years. People were going into smaller and smaller homes. But then when they were home with their family for a year, they decided that wasn't as fun, and people were wanting to buy larger houses to be home in. So you had more lumber being used there. The lack of drivers for transportation, maintenance delays, mills just missed a lot of production in general. And we're just a tiny, tiny fraction of the lumber production that's out there in North America. But if you take every mill like us, and if they all missed 5 or 10 days or whatever it was, and you add that up, it was a whole lot of lumber that came off the market there. But as we all seen lately, lending rates are on the rise, increased instability in our macroeconomy, rapid inflation. All this is leading to a recent downturn in housing demand. Attainability is also part of the problem. People may still want a house, but if they can't afford it now because of the increased rates, that's not going to work. So all this has led to currently lumber demand and pricing at the mill level has gone down. Now you may not have seen that at Home Depot yet. It takes a while to digest all that expensive lumber that everybody has bought. In fact, we have a couple months of lumber sold that still have pretty nice prices, but out past a couple months, I see lumber prices falling. So you may be looking at 4, 6, or 8 months before you see it at your local hardware store. But lumber prices are on the decline. This is just the composite lumber index pricing. So this is a bunch of different lumber, it's not studs, it's not number 2 2x6s, it's everything combined, and the average price, and you can see we peaked at about $1,500 there last May. This May, we were really nice, and we've been heading, this March, we were really nice, and we're headed down now. That was about all I had planned to talk about, but I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Yeah, he doesn't want any
Hard questions.
hard questions.
Just softball.
And I said, in all honesty, Mike, you're gonna be an easy one, yeah. So we'll start with,
Thank you. Mike, how do you get that lumber from Del Norte to Montrose with Highway 50 being closed so much of the time?
Great question. We look at those schedules like everybody else do, or if we don't look at the schedule, we're going around the Blue Mesa Dam way there, and we're adding $300-400 in costs to hauling that load. I figured it back when we were one of the strong components of getting rid of, delaying, whatever we had to do to not have that project, because we had so many thousands of truckloads on the other side of that cannon. But I figured it at millions, literally millions of dollars that project has cost us.
So you can take the trucks over Black Mesa?
We can. They made a special exception. They being the DOT.
Yeah, Mike, this is I have a comment and a question. So I do a lot of skiing up at Grand Mesa, and I really appreciate the Forest Products modifying their release time and so forth so that it wouldn't interfere with the cross-country skiing up there. And I know a lot of people that ski up there and really appreciated that that you guys did. The question I have is, eventually we're going to be running out of good lumber, and what is engineered lumber, and do you have any plans of doing that at your facility?
Sure. So engineered lumber is a pretty broad term, but that could be anything from, of course, in panels they've been doing it for years. OSB, where you've got that's oriented strand board or chipboard or flake board, as you might know it. That's engineered panels. Engineered lumber, they're making the same way. Other engineered lumber, they're taking smaller chunks of good lumber and putting them together. That wouldn't, they're not in a very good form when they're a foot long, but you can put them together with a lot of other pieces, and now it's a piece of engineered lumber. Currently, we don't have any plans for any engineered lumber. I'm not sure about the comment, we'll run out of good lumber. I mean, it's a very renewable resource. We're not taxing the forests at this time with what especially here in Colorado. Now, granted, if it all burns up or something like that, yeah, we would run out, but we're not going to run out from the harvest that we're doing at the mill.
You mentioned that you've got all these different types of lumber that comes in, and they're different ages, but don't they have, the moisture content has to be so low before it can be graded? And do you have a kiln out there?
Yes, sir. We've got 3 kilns. The studs have to be, after we cut the lumber, the studs have to go to 19% or less moisture content. So we'll put them in the kilns. Dead logs might already be below 19, but they still have to go in the kilns because they have to be heat treated. We put a HT stamp on our lumber. It means that any bugs or organisms have never been killed because they've been in the oven for long. But yes, we have 3 giant, well, we have 2, and then we're building a 3rd right now on the kilns. Sorry, was there another part to that?
Before you took over the mill, I remember it was really tough to get a government contract to buy an area of the forest or to be able to go in and log there. What is it like dealing with the government right now? Have they become any easier?
The government's in the room, so I'm going to be real careful. No, the National Forest, the way it works is they put up timber sales. It may be any size of timber sale, from something very small to many thousands of acres, or maybe not many, but thousands of acres. And then they accept bids on that. So you go out, we go, and it's a sealed bid, and we have a team of foresters, and they go look at the sale, and they decide what we might be able to get out of that. and then what we can afford to pay for that. And a lot of things come into play is how far that haul is, what condition the timber's in, where it is, how easy it is to get to. So there's a lot of challenges, but right now, like I said, we have 2 years under contract. We use all the forests we can. I wouldn't say there's an overabundance. We try to basically buy everything that we can unless there's just some reason we absolutely cannot bid on that sale. We have to watch out. There's not a ton of big competition in Colorado, but there's a lot of little guys, and they sneak in there and outbid you. And again, those are sealed bids. And you can't bid every sale up just because there might be somebody that comes in and gets it, so we lose some sales here and there. Our company as a whole has had a real tough time up in the Black Hills right now. We had to shut down a mill last year because we weren't able to secure enough timber. So there are definitely concerns, but the G-Mug, Chad Stewart, is the forest supervisor over there, he's here. They do a real good job for us, and I was saying the San Juan is coming on as well. They have a lot of masters to serve. It's not just the mill, they're our national forest. We've got the recreators and the hunters and, all kinds of people that would just rather the trees burn, maybe not burn, but die in the woods and blow away. And they have to be sensitive to all that stuff. So it's a challenge, I think, for them as well. But Jack could speak better to that. But yeah, it's a challenge, but it's doable. We're our company, between our mill and their mills in the Black Hills, every year we're one of the largest purchasers of federal timber in the country. And that's just because a lot of mills don't cut federal timber because it's not available in their areas in large volumes anymore. So in the southeast especially, it's almost all private. And in the northwest, it's a bit of a mix, but most mills get a lot more of their mix from private timber. It's definitely a risk. Sometimes I think our ownership's crazy for investing all these millions of dollars in, something that could go away at the whim of an administration.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Does anybody have another question?
Could you talk a little bit about Aspen and Cedar and your consideration of ever doing anything with that?
Sure. How about no? I know there's a lot of aspen around here that we need an outlet. Chad, I'm sure would tell you we need outlets for aspen. Our mill simply isn't set up to cut aspen. There's a lot more to it than it sounds. I do know the mill down at Blanca, Colorado, that's a long ways from here. It'd be hard to get aspen there, and they're not real big, but they're cutting a little aspen. They're the only ones I know of right now. And of course, down around Dolores, you've got a company called Aspen Wallwood that does some aspen paneling, and then there's an Excelsior plant that does some aspen. But as far as us, at this time, there's no plans for aspen. It would take a lot of retooling and a lot more investment.
Okay, so I lied. We're going to do just one last question because these hands came up simultaneously.
It looks like maintenance would be a big thing for you with all that automated equipment, and if any little bolt goes bad, you gotta stop the whole line, do you not?
You nailed it, and it's all in a line, and that makes it tough. We've got a good team of millwrights. I wish we had more millwrights, what we call our maintenance people. They can weld, they can do some pneumatics, or know enough electrical to be dangerous. And we've got a team of those guys, and that's all they do is fix things. And we've got several that work on the day shift, and they kind of chase things around, and if something breaks, they kind of fix it just enough to get us going. And then we have a night shift of maintenance guys that comes in, hopefully fixes it the right way at night, and then we're ready to start up again in the morning. But yeah, maintenance is huge.
Okay, fascinating presentation. Thanks, Mike. That's good.
Thank
Let's
you.
give him one.